highlighted, annotated, sticky notes everywhere, hours and hours of careful reading, meticulous note-taking, every important passage marked, every key concept flagged, and the person who studied it this way remembers almost nothing. Hey, hold up the pristine book. This book was also studied, but differently. No highlights, no notes in the margins, no sticky tabs, looks untouched, and the person who studied it this way can explain every concept, apply every principle, use the knowledge years later, put books down. What's the difference? Why does one method create the illusion of learning while the other creates actual understanding? Why do 99% of people waste countless hours using the first approach when the second approach actually works? Direct address, Richard Feynman discovered the answer, not through research, through frustration, through watching brilliant students work incredibly hard and learn almost nothing, through seeing people spend years in education and emerge barely more capable than when they started. And what he discovered was simple, devastating, and completely reversible once you understand it. 99% of people make one fundamental mistake when they learn, one error that undermines everything. One approach that feels productive but creates nothing. One habit that wastes more time than any other learning mistake combined. Hi Colleen, and today, I'm going to reveal that mistake, show you exactly what it is, prove that you're probably making it right now, and teach you how to fix it. Because once you see this mistake, once you understand why it fails, you'll never learn the same way again, and everything you study from that point forward will actually stick. Walk across stage. Let me start with the story that reveals everything. It's 1952. Feynman is teaching physics in Brazil, at the University of Rio de Janeiro, and he's shocked by what he discovers. The students are working harder than any students he's ever seen. Hours every day, reading textbooks, taking notes, memorizing, studying intensively, and they're learning nothing. Build the scenes are not nothing in the sense of not much, nothing in the sense of literally nothing. Zero understanding. Zero capability, zero transfer of knowledge to actual application. They ace the exams, perfect scores. They can recite everything perfectly, but ask them to apply the physics to a real situation. Something simple, something obvious, and they're completely lost. Share his investigation. So Feynman investigates. What's going wrong? These are smart students. They're working hard. They're spending the time. Why aren't they learning? And he discovers something that shocks him. Something so fundamental that it explains not just Brazilian physics education, but most learning everywhere. Cray revealed the mistake. The students are studying words instead of studying reality. They're learning language instead of learning concepts. They're acquiring the ability to talk about physics without acquiring any understanding of actual physics. And they don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're learning physics. They're working hard at learning physics. But they're actually just learning how to say physics words. Overheat make it concrete. Feynman gives them a problem. Light reflects off water at an angle. Explain why using what you've learned about electromagnetic radiation and polarization. The students stare blankly. They've studied electromagnetic radiation. They've studied polarization. They've studied reflection. They know all the terminology. They can define every term. But they can't connect it to actual light reflecting off actual water. Because they never learned to connect language to reality. They learned words, not things. That's a reveal the core mistake. That's the mistake. That's what 99% of people do. That's what you're probably doing right now. You study the language of a subject instead of studying the subject itself. You learn to talk about things instead of learning the things. You acquire vocabulary instead of understanding. Physicians make the distinction. Here's the difference of studying language. Reading photosynthesis is the process by which plants convert light energy into chemical energy through the use of chlorophyll. Studying reality. Understanding that plants are essentially solar panels, capturing light and using it to build molecules. And visualizing that process happening in leaves right now. Continue studying language. The derivative represents the rate of change of a function with respect to its variable. Studying reality. Understanding that if you're driving and your speedometer shows 60 mph, that's the derivative of your position, how fast your location is changing, and being able to see derivatives everywhere in the real world. Manfire can make it clear the mistake isn't that you use language. You have to use language. Language is how we communicate. The mistake is treating language as the thing to learn instead of as a tool for learning about reality. Present the framework. Let me show you exactly how this mistake manifests, the specific ways people study language instead of reality. Because once you see these patterns, you'll recognize them everywhere, especially in your own learning. Eisen Manifestation 1. Manifestation 1. Reading without visualizing. Most people read textbooks like novels, words flowing through their mind, comprehending sentences, following along, thinking they're learning, but they're not visualizing what the words describe. They're not building mental pictures of the actual phenomena. They're processing language without connecting it to reality. AC Make It Concrete is a reading about cell division. During metaphase, chromosomes align at the metaphase plate while spindle fibers attach to kinetochores. Processing, that is language, you understand the sentence. You know what each word means. You can repeat the sentence. Processing it as reality. You visualize chromosomes, those X-shaped structures, lining up in the middle of the cell. You see the spindle fibers, like tiny ropes, grabbing onto attachment points. You watch it happening in your mind like a movie. Sheathars make the distinction. One approach learns words. The other learns what words describe. Same time investment, completely different outcomes. Give Feynman example. Feynman never read without visualizing. Every sentence describing a phenomenon, he'd stop and build a mental picture. What does this look like? What's actually happening? How would I see this if I could watch it? That's why his understanding was so deep. He wasn't learning physics language. He was learning actual physics. The language was just a tool for accessing reality. Manifestation 2. Manifestation 2. Memorizing definitions without understanding reference. This is epidemic. People memorize what things are called without understanding what they are. They learn the label without learning the thing the label points to. But I can make it concretus or biology class. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. Memorize that? Great. What are mitochondria? Not what are they called. What are they? What do they actually do? How do they work? What's the mechanism? Most people can't answer. They memorize the slogan without understanding the reality. Masar, give another example. Economics. Inflation is a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services. Memorize that. What causes inflation? What's actually happening in an economy experiencing inflation? What are the mechanisms? What are the real world effects? Can't answer. You've learned the definition without understanding the phenomenon. I make the point. Definitions are language about reality. Learning definitions without understanding reality is studying language, not studying the subject. Give Feynman's approach where Feynman never memorized definitions. He built understanding of phenomena. Then the definitions were just convenient labels for things he already understood. He'd ask you, what is this actually? What's happening? How does it work? Only after understanding would he care about what it's called. Manifestation 3. Manifestation 3. Taking notes without processing. Lectures, textbooks, videos. People frantically taking notes, writing down everything, capturing all the information, and learning nothing. Aker explain why. Because note-taking without processing is transcription, not learning. You're copying language from one place to another. Information passes through your hands without passing through your understanding. Make It Concrete lecture on World War Q8 professor talks about the Treaty of Versailles. You write, Treaty of Versailles 1919 ended WWI, imposed harsh penalties on Germany, contributed to WWI, captured the information, didn't process it, didn't think about what this actually means, didn't visualize the historical reality, just transcribed language. Show the alternative processing while listening, Treaty of Versailles. Okay, the victors punished Germany severely, made them pay for the war, probably created resentment, economic hardship, national humiliation. That would create conditions for someone like Hitler to rise. This wasn't just a treaty, this was creating the causes of the next war. Now you're thinking about reality, not just recording language. Give Feynman's practice. Feynman took minimal notes, instead he thought, processed. Built understanding in real time. His notes were questions, connections, things to explore, not transcriptions of what was said. Manifestation 4. Manifestation 4. Reviewing notes without reconstructing understanding. After taking all those notes, people review them, reread them, go over them again and again. Feels productive. It's not explain why rereading notes is recognizing language you've seen before. Recognition isn't understanding. You're not rebuilding the knowledge. You're not reconstructing the reality. You're just getting familiar with words. Ache, make it concrete. Your notes say, mitochondria generate ATP through cellular respiration. Reading that, yep, I've seen that before. I know that. Do you? Close the notes. Explain how mitochondria actually generate ATP. What's the mechanism? What's happening step by step? Can't do it. You recognize the language without understanding the reality. Hey, show the alternative, close the notes. Blank page. Reconstruct from memory. Mitochondria take in glucose, I think, and oxygen. They break down the glucose through several steps. This releases energy, which they use to make ATP. The ATP then, where you get stuck, that's where your understanding is weak. That's what you actually need to study. Richard Feynman's method. Feynman never reviewed notes. He reconstructed understanding. Tried to explain concepts without looking. Where he couldn't, he knew he needed more work on that specific thing. A manifestation. 5. The manifestation. 5. Using flashcards for concepts. Flashcards work for pure memorization. Languages, capitals. Takes things that are just arbitrary associations. But 99% of people use flashcards for concepts. For understanding, for things that aren't just memorization, and it doesn't work. Explain why key. Because flashcards train recognition of language. See this term, recall that definition. Language in, language out. No connection to reality. Ours make it concrete, our flashcard front. Newton's second law, back FMA, you drill this. See, Newton's second law, instantly think FMA, perfect recall. But what is Newton's second law? Not the formula. What's the actual principle? What does it mean? When does it apply? How do you use it? Flashcard didn't teach that. Flashcard taught you to recognize language. X show what's needed. Understanding Newton's second law forces cause acceleration. More force, more acceleration. More mass, less acceleration. You can feel this when you push a shopping cart versus a car. You can see it when you kick a soccer ball versus a boulder. You can apply it to calculate how much force is needed to accelerate something specific. That's understanding reality. Can't get that from flashcards. Bring manifestations together. So those are 5 manifestations of the mistake. Reading without visualizing. Memorizing definitions without understanding reference. Taking notes without processing. Reviewing notes without reconstructing. Using flashcards for concepts. Make the point all 5 are studying language instead of studying reality. All 5 feel productive. All 5 create the illusion of learning. All 5 fail to create actual understanding. Present the solution. So how do you fix this? How do you study reality instead of studying language? How do you avoid the mistake 99% of people make? Feynman had specific practices, concrete methods, ways to ensure you're connecting language to reality instead of just accumulating words. Method 1, the visualization test. After reading anything, a paragraph, a page, a section, stop, close your eyes, visualize what you just read. Build a mental movie of the actual reality being described. If you can't visualize it, you didn't understand it. You just process language without connecting to reality. Make it practical. Reading about photosynthesis, stop after each step. Visualize it. See the chlorophyll molecules. See the light hitting them. See the electrons getting excited. See the energy being captured. See the carbon dioxide being turned into glucose. Can you see it? Really see it? If yes, you understood. If no, you just read words without understanding what they describe. How could give the practice, make this a habit, read. Visualize, read, visualize. Constantly converting language into mental pictures of reality. This is slower than just reading. Much slower. But it actually creates learning. Reading without visualizing is fast, but creates nothing. Method 2, the explanation test. After studying anything, explain it out loud. To yourself, to someone else, to an imaginary person, but out loud, using only simple words. No jargon unless you can define it simply. If you can explain it simply, you understand the reality. If you need jargon to explain it, you only understand language. Our second, make it concrete, is studied quantum entanglement, explain it simply. When 2 particles interact, they become connected in a weird way. If you measure one, it instantly affects the other, even if they're far apart. Nobody knows why, it's spooky. Not complete, but it captures the reality. Shows you understand the phenomenon, not just the terminology. A severe contrast with jargon-dependent, quantum entanglement occurs when particles exist in correlated quantum states. such that measurement of one particle's observable instantaneously determines the corresponding observable of the entangled partner, regardless of spatial separation. Sounds impressive. But strip away the jargon. Can you explain what's actually happening? If not, you understand language, not reality. Chef, give Feynman's standard of Feynman's test. Can I explain this to a bartender? Someone with no technical background. Someone who needs simple language. If yes, understanding is real. If no, more work needed. Eka Method 3, the connection test. After learning something new, connect it to 3 things you already know. 3 different things. From different domains if possible. If you can make connections, you understand the underlying reality. If you can't, you just know isolated language. Make it concrete, learning about compound interest connected. Connection 1, like a snowball rolling downhill, gets bigger as it rolls. The bigger it gets, the faster it grows. Connection 2, like viral spread. Each infected person infects multiple others. Growth accelerates. Connection 3, like my credit card debt. That's compound interest working against me. Now I understand why it's so hard to pay off. Yeah, if I'd explain why this works, real understanding of reality lets you see patterns, make analogies, transfer across domains. Language knowledge is isolated, can't connect. Give Feynman example if Feynman connected everything. Physics to biology, math to daily life, abstract to concrete. His understanding was a web, everything linked, because he understood realities, not just languages. Method 4 is Method 4, the application test. After studying something, find a real situation where you can apply it. Not a textbook problem, a real thing. Something in your actual life or the actual world. If you can apply it to reality, you understand reality. If you can only solve textbook problems, you understand problem language, not the underlying concepts. Make it concrete. Studied basic economics. Supply and demand. Don't just solve textbook problems. Apply it. Why are concert tickets so expensive? Limited supply, high demand. Why are strawberries cheap in summer? High supply, steady demand. Why did PS5s cost so much after release? Limited supply, very high demand. You're seeing the actual economics in the actual world, not just manipulating economic language in textbook scenarios. Exert Jiv the practice. For everything you learn, find 3 real-world applications. Force yourself to see the reality behind the language in actual situations. This bridges the gap between language and reality, makes understanding practical, prevents pure language learning. Method 5, the reconstruction test. After studying, wait a day, don't review. Just wait. Then, without looking at anything, reconstruct what you learned on a blank page, from memory in your own words. This reveals what you actually understand versus what you just temporarily memorized. Explain why this works, Strix. When you reconstruct, you can't rely on recognition. Can't just identify familiar language. You have to actually know the reality, understand the concepts, build the explanation from your own understanding, and make it practical. I studied cell division yesterday. Today, blank page. Explain cell division. What happens? In what order? Why? What's the mechanism? Where you get stuck? That's language you memorized without understanding reality. Go back. But this time, build understanding of that specific thing. What's actually happening there? Visualize it. Can I apply it? Hayes, give Feynman's habit. Feynman constantly reconstructed, tried to derive things from first principles, tried to explain without referring to notes. That's how he tested his understanding. That's how he ensured he knew reality, not just language. Father, tell transformation story. Let me tell you about someone who fixed this mistake. Call her Sarah. Sarah was a law student, working incredibly hard, reading cases, taking detailed notes, memorizing precedents, highlighting textbooks, making flashcards, and failing. Not getting it. Couldn't think like a lawyer. Couldn't apply the law to novel situations. Couldn't see how principles connected. Fast the realization. Then she realized she was studying legal language, learning how to talk about law, memorizing case names and terms, but not understanding actual legal reasoning, not seeing the reality of how law works. She was making the mistake 99% of people make. The change, so she changed everything. Stopped highlighting, stopped making flashcards, stopped taking transcription notes, started visualizing. Every case, she'd visualize the actual situation. Actual people in actual conflict. Actual judges reasoning through actual problems. Started explaining, out loud, in simple words. What actually happened? Why did the court decide this way? What's the principle? Started connecting. How does this case relate to others? What patterns exist? What's the underlying logic? Started applying, saw law in real news stories. Real situations, real conflicts, started reconstructing, closed books. Explained cases from memory. We're stuck, knew what she needed to actually understand. The transformation is 6 months later, different student. Not just better grades, better thinking. She could reason through novel legal problems, see patterns, apply principles. Think like a lawyer, not because she memorized more, because she stopped studying language and started studying reality. Make the universal point. That's available to you. That transformation, that shift from language to reality, that move from 99% who make the mistake to 1% who don't. Address the deeper issue. Now, let me show you why this mistake is so common. Why 99% of people do it. Why even smart people studying hard fall into this trap. Reason wanting, because language feels like learning. When you read textbooks, take notes, make flashcards, you feel productive. You're doing learning activities. You're engaging with educational materials. But feeling productive isn't being productive. Activity isn't learning. Make the distinction. Studying language creates the sensation of learning without the substance. Your brain processes information. Feels like work. Feels like progress. But no understanding is built. Studying reality is slower. Feels harder. Less obviously productive. But actually creates understanding. Fair reason too, because tests often reward language knowledge, multiple choice, short answer, recall, recognition. You can pass by knowing language without understanding reality. So students optimize for tests, learn language, pass exams, think they learned, but they didn't. Make the point, Feynman hated this about education. Tests that measured language instead of understanding. Tests you could pass by memorizing words without knowing things. He designed his tests differently, novel problems. Situations requiring understanding. Applications you couldn't pass by just knowing language. Reason 3. Because studying language is comfortable. Studying reality is uncomfortable. Language is familiar. Reality requires visualization, connection, application, mental work that feels difficult. So people default to comfortable. Read, highlight, review. Recognize all comfortable, all language focused, all ineffective. Make the challenge. Real learning requires discomfort. Requires effort. Requires doing things that feel hard. But that discomfort is learning happening. That difficulty is understanding being built. Press our walk to center. So here's what you need to understand. 99% of people make one fundamental mistake. They study language instead of studying reality. Einthak's direct statement, and that mistake, that one error, wastes more learning time than anything else. Thousands of hours spent studying. Minimal understanding created. Because all that study focused on language, not reality. The solution is study reality, not language about reality. Reality itself. Visualize what language describes. Explain without relying on jargon. Connect to things you know. Apply to real situations. Reconstruct from understanding. The promise to do this, and everything changes. Hours of study create actual understanding instead of temporary familiarity. Knowledge sticks instead of disappearing. Learning becomes usable instead of just recitable. A final challenge. So here's my challenge. Pick something you're studying right now. Something you've been working on, using traditional methods, reading, highlighting, taking notes, reviewing. Stop. Ask yourself, am I studying language or studying reality? Am I learning to talk about this thing or learning the thing itself? Continue then change. Use the 5 methods. Visualize what the language describes. Explain it simply without jargon. Connect it to 3 other things. Apply it to real situations. Reconstruct it without looking. Make the prediction. You'll immediately feel the difference between processing language and understanding reality, between feeling productive and being productive, between studying and learning. Final statement, and not like 99% of people study language instead of reality. That's the mistake. That's what wastes their time. That's why they work hard and learn little.
Pauses.
Don't be the 99%. Study reality, not language. That's what Feynman did. That's how smart minds actually learn. Thank you. That's your BT, and if you want to understand more about how Feynman learned, the specific techniques, the detailed practices, the actual methods for connecting language to reality, do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the Mind of Richard Feynman channel. We're exploring how to actually learn, how to study reality instead of language, how to build understanding that lasts. Join us. Let's avoid the mistake 99% make. See you in the next one. Your mind is being controlled right now, not by me, not by some government conspiracy, not by subliminal messages or secret technology, by something much more powerful, much more insidious, much more effective, by a rule, a simple rule. A rule that governs how your brain interprets reality. A rule that determines what you believe, what you notice, what you remember, and what you ignore. Xe lean in XX, and here's the disturbing part. You don't know this rule exists. Nobody taught you about it. Nobody warned you about it. Nobody gave you the tools to defend against it. That's not an accident. Because once you understand this rule, once you see how it controls your mind, you become very, very hard to manipulate. Frank direct address Richard Feynman understood this rule. He discovered it. He studied it. He learned to see when it was controlling his own mind, and he learned to break free from it. And that ability, that capacity to see and break this mind control, that's what made him not just a great physicist, but a clear thinker about everything. Today, I'm going to reveal this rule to you. I'm going to show you exactly how it controls your mind, and I'm going to teach you how to break free from it. Fresh a warning tone. A fair warning once you see this, you can't unsee it. You'll start noticing it everywhere, in yourself, in others, in the news, in social media, in politics, in marketing, everywhere. Your perception of reality is about to change. Walk across stage. Let me start by showing you this rule in action, because the best way to understand it is to experience it. I'm going to tell you a story, and while I tell you this story, pay attention to what your mind does. Pay attention to what you believe, what you question, and what you accept without question. Begin story, it's 1940s, World War II, the Manhattan Project. Scientists are working on the atomic bomb in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Security is tight, really tight. The government is paranoid about spies, about leaks, about anyone getting information about the bomb. And there's this young physicist, Richard Feynman, 20-something years old, and he's breaking into safes. A fee pause for effect and not because he's a spy, not because he's stealing secrets, but because he's curious, because he wants to see if he can do it, because it's a puzzle. He figures out how to crack the combination locks on the safes where classified documents are stored. He leaves notes inside saying, "I was here." He does it again and again, to prove a point about security. Heather share the reaction, and the security officers are furious. They can't believe this young physicist is making their security look foolish. They want to stop him. They want to catch him. They want to prove he's doing something wrong. So they investigate. They watch him. They monitor his activities. They're convinced he must be up to something sinister. S now reveals, and here's the question. What did your mind do while I told you that story? Did you believe it? Did you find it interesting? Did you accept it as true? Pause par or did you question it? Did you wonder if I was making it up? Did you demand evidence? Be honest. Most of you believed it, maybe not 100%, but you accepted it as probably true, interesting, plausible. Make the point why. Why did you believe a story told by a stranger on a stage? I didn't provide sources. I didn't show evidence. I didn't prove anything. You believed it because of the rule, the mind control rule that operates in your brain right now. Reveal the rule, here it is. The rule that controls your mind, your brain defaults to belief. Let that land, not skepticism, not questioning, belief. When you hear information, any information, your brain's first response is to accept it as true, to believe it, to incorporate it into your model of reality. Questioning comes later, if at all, and it requires effort. It requires conscious thought. It requires actively choosing to doubt. But belief is automatic, effortless, default. Often explain why this matters is how your mind is controlled, not by forcing you to believe lies, but by exploiting your brain's default setting. Tell you something, your brain believes it. Doesn't matter if it's true. Doesn't matter if there's evidence. Your brain defaults to accepting it, and once you believe something, it's incredibly hard to unbelieve it. Even when you learn it's false, even when you see evidence against it. I share research, psychologists have studied this. They call it the truth default. Your brain assumes information is true unless you actively work to question it. They've done experiments. Tell people false information, then immediately tell them it was false, and weeks later, test what they remember. People remember the false information as true, even though they were explicitly told it was false, even though they knew better. Make it visceral. Hey, your brain believed first. and that belief stuck, even after you tried to reject it. That's the mind control rule in action. Share Feynman's discovery. And the Feynman discovered this about his own mind, and it shocked him. He was reading scientific papers, and he noticed he believed what the papers said automatically, even though he knew, intellectually, that scientists make mistakes, that papers can be wrong, that he should be skeptical, but his brain defaulted to belief. He had to actively work to question, to doubt, to think critically, share his insight, and he realized this is dangerous, really dangerous, because if his brain, a trained physicist's brain, a Nobel Prize winner's brain, defaulted to belief, what chance did ordinary people have? How much false information were people walking around believing? Not because they were stupid, not because they weren't thinking, but because their brains defaulted to belief and they never learned to override that default. Make it personal and think about your own mind. Right now, today, how many things do you believe simply because someone told you? How many facts in your head did you accept without questioning? Give examples. You believe your friend when they tell you about their day. You believe the news when it reports an event. You believe statistics you read online. You believe explanations for how things work. Did you verify any of it? Did you check sources? Did you demand evidence? Did you question the logic? Probably not. Your brain defaulted to belief, and you never thought to question it. That's not a criticism. That's how brains work. That's the default setting. But here's the problem. Someone who understands this rule can exploit it, can control your mind, can make you believe things that aren't true, can manipulate your perception of reality. Hey, get intense, sis. Let me show you how this works. How this rule is being used to control your mind right now. First manipulation technique, first technique repetition. Tell you something once, your brain might question it, might not fully believe it, might remain skeptical. Tell you the same thing 10 times from 10 different sources, and your brain stops questioning. It accepts it as true, because repetition feels like consensus, like multiple confirmations, like reliability. Give example, that's why advertising works. Not because the ad is convincing the first time you see it, but because you see it over and over, and eventually your brain accepts the message as true. This product will make you happy. Logically that's not true. Products don't create happiness. But after seeing the ad 50 times, your brain has absorbed the belief. And when you're shopping, you find yourself drawn to that product. Asuras make it broader. This is why propaganda works. Repeat a message enough times, through enough channels, and people believe it. Not because they're stupid, but because their brains default to belief and repetition overrides skepticism. Second technique, authority. Tell you something as just some random person, and your brain might question it, might remain skeptical. Tell you the same thing but claim it comes from an expert, a doctor, a scientist, a professor, and your brain accepts it more readily, because authority triggers the default belief mechanism even more strongly. Studies show examples. Experts say, research indicates, doctors recommend. Your brain hears those phrases and stops questioning, because authority implies trustworthiness, and your brain defaults to believing trustworthy sources. Key reveal the problem. But who are these experts? What studies? Which doctors? Your brain doesn't ask. It just believes. And marketers, politicians, propagandists? They know this. They exploit it. They claim authority whether they have it or not, because they know your brain will default to belief. Third technique, emotional manipulation. Tell you something in a neutral way and your brain might question it, might analyze it logically. Tell you the same thing with emotional content, fear, anger, outrage, sympathy, and your brain's critical thinking shuts down. Emotion overrides skepticism, and your default belief mechanism takes over completely. Give example, immigrants are dangerous, neutral statement. Your brain might question it, might ask for evidence, might think critically. Immigrants are attacking our children. Emotional statement, fear, outrage, protective instincts. Your brain stops questioning and starts believing. Make the point or same basic claim. But emotion bypasses your critical thinking, activates your default belief mechanism, makes you susceptible to manipulation. Pause, bring it together. So that's how the mind control rule is exploited. Repetition overrides skepticism. Authority triggers automatic belief. Emotion shuts down critical thinking. FR's direct statement, and this is happening to you right now. Every day, all the time. News media uses these techniques. Social media uses these techniques. Marketing uses these techniques. Politicians use these techniques. They understand the mind control rule. They understand that your brain defaults to belief, and they exploit it. Our get serious GR now, here's what Feynman understood. Here's what made him different. He learned to catch his own mind in the act of defaulting to belief, and he learned to override it. He developed a mental habit, a practice, a way of thinking that protected him from manipulation. Reveal Feynman's defense, he called it. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. That's the defense against the mind control rule. Recognizing that your own brain is trying to fool you, that your default belief mechanism is working against you. Praxer explained the practice. Here's what Feynman did. Every time he encountered information, any information, he asked himself 3 questions. Question 1, do I actually know this is true? Or am I just believing it because someone said it? Question 2, what evidence do I have? Real evidence. Not just repetition, not just authority, not just emotion. Question 3, what would I need to see to change my mind about this? What would disprove it? I can make it concrete. Let me show you this in practice. Real example from Feynman's life. He's reading a scientific paper. The paper claims that a certain particle behaves in a certain way. The paper is from a respected lab, published in a good journal, written by credible scientists. Feynman's brain defaults to belief. This is probably true. Ours show him catching himself. But then he catches himself. He asks, do I actually know this is true? Or am I just believing it because it's in a journal? He doesn't know it's true. He's just believing it. What evidence do I have? The paper describes an experiment, but Feynman hasn't seen the experiment, hasn't verified the data, hasn't checked the methodology. What would disprove this? If the experiment were repeated and showed different results, if the methodology had flaws, if the data were wrong. She revealed the outcome. So Feynman doesn't just believe the paper, he treats it as a hypothesis. Something to investigate, something to verify. And sometimes, when he investigates, he discovers the paper was wrong. The experiment had flaws. The conclusions didn't follow from the data. If a hair make the point, if he'd defaulted to belief, if he'd let his brain accept it without question, he'd be walking around with false information, building his understanding on false foundations. But because he caught his mind in the act of defaulting to belief, he avoided being fooled. Direct address, that's the defense. That's how you break the mind control rule. Not by being a skeptic about everything. Not by refusing to believe anything. But by catching your mind in the act of defaulting to belief. And choosing to question before accepting. Present the practice. Here's how you do this. Practical method. Use it starting today. Step 1, notice when you believe something. This is harder than it sounds. Because belief feels like knowing. Your brain doesn't distinguish between I believe this and I know this, so you have to catch yourself. Pay attention to what you accept as true, what you treat as fact, what you incorporate into your worldview. Here's a trick key throughout the day. Randomly stop and ask yourself, what do I believe right now that I didn't verify? Maybe you believe the weather forecast. Did you verify it? Or did you just accept what the app told you? Maybe you believe a friend's story about their day. Did you verify it, or did you just accept it? Maybe you believe a news headline. Did you verify it, or did you just accept it? Make the point. You'll be shocked how much you believe without verification. How often your brain defaults to accepting information without question. That awareness, that recognition of your own default belief mechanism, that's the first step. Step 2, ask the 3 questions. When you catch yourself believing something, ask, do I actually know this is true? Or am I just believing it? What evidence do I have? Real, verifiable evidence. What would disprove this? What evidence would change my mind? Explain why this works. These questions override your default belief mechanism. They force your brain into critical thinking mode. They make you actively evaluate information instead of passively accepting it. Give example. You read a headline, new study shows coffee causes cancer. Your brain defaults to belief. Oh no, coffee causes cancer. You ask the questions. Do I know this is true? No, I just read a headline. What evidence do I have? None. I haven't seen the study. I don't know the methodology. I don't know the sample size or the statistical significance. What would disprove this? If the study had methodological flaws, if other studies showed opposite results, if the headline misrepresented the findings, I'll reveal what happens. Now you're not believing the headline. You're treating it as something to investigate, something to verify, something to question. Your mind is no longer being controlled by the default belief mechanism. Step 3, actively seek disconfirming evidence. This is crucial. Your brain not only defaults to belief, it also seeks confirming evidence. It looks for information that supports what you already believe. That's called confirmation bias, and it works together with the default belief rule to trap you in false beliefs. Explain the trap. You believe something, default belief. Then you notice evidence that supports it, confirmation bias. That reinforces your belief, makes it stronger, harder to question. Even if there's mountains of evidence against it, you don't see that evidence because your brain isn't looking for it. Give the solution, so you have to deliberately seek disconfirming evidence. Actively look for information that contradicts what you believe. I believe coffee causes cancer. Let me specifically search for evidence that coffee doesn't cause cancer. Let me look for studies with opposite findings. Let me seek out expert opinions that disagree. Make the point this feels wrong. It feels like you're trying to prove yourself wrong, like you're being disloyal to your own beliefs. But that's exactly what you need to do, because your brain's natural tendency is to prove yourself right, to confirm your beliefs, to avoid contradictory information. Share Feynman wisdom of Feynman said, "I'm not afraid of being wrong. I'm afraid of being wrong and not knowing it." That's the attitude you need. You want to discover when you're wrong as quickly as possible, before you build more false beliefs on top of false foundations. Tell transformation story. Let me tell you about someone who learned this. Call him Mike. Mike was a smart guy, successful career, well-read, thought of himself as a critical thinker, but he believed a lot of things that weren't true, not because he was stupid, but because his brain defaulted to belief, and he never questioned that default. Rashir continues story. He believed certain political narratives, certain health claims, certain explanations for how the world works. He'd heard them repeated. They came from apparent authorities. They felt emotionally true. And he built his entire worldview on these beliefs, made decisions based on them, judged people based on them, lived his life according to them. The turning point. Then he learned about the mind control rule, the default belief mechanism, and he started practicing Feynman's questions, and he was shocked. So many things he believed, he couldn't actually justify. He had no real evidence. He'd never sought disconfirming information. He just believed. The transformation so he started over, going through his beliefs systematically, asking the 3 questions, seeking disconfirming evidence, and his worldview changed dramatically. Not because he became more skeptical in general, but because he stopped accepting information without verification. Some beliefs held up. When he investigated, he found strong evidence, multiple independent sources, logic that held together. Those beliefs got stronger, but many beliefs collapsed. When he investigated, he found weak evidence, contradictory information, logical flaws. Those beliefs he discarded. The result 6 months later, Mike was a different person, not less confident, more confident, because now his beliefs were grounded in evidence, not in default acceptance. He couldn't be manipulated as easily, couldn't be swayed by repetition or authority or emotion, because he'd trained his mind to override the default belief mechanism. Make the point. That's what happens when you understand and break the mind control rule. You become very hard to fool, very hard to manipulate, very hard to control. Not because you become a skeptic who believes nothing, but because you become discerning. You believe things for good reasons, not just because your brain defaulted to belief. Address the discomfort. Now I need to warn you about something. This practice is uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, because when you start questioning your beliefs, you discover many of them are wrong, or at least not as solid as you thought. And that's disturbing. Your beliefs feel like knowledge, like part of your identity. Questioning them feels like questioning yourself. After Share Feynman's experience Feynman experienced this too. He discovered beliefs he held, even as a trained physicist, that he couldn't justify, that he'd accepted without evidence, that were based on default belief, not critical thinking. and it bothered him, made him uncomfortable, made him question how much else he believed without justification. Aka make the point die, but he leaned into that discomfort. Because he understood, being wrong and knowing it is better than being wrong and not knowing it. False beliefs don't help you. They lead you to make bad decisions, to misunderstand reality, to be easily manipulated. True beliefs, beliefs grounded in evidence, those help you. Those let you navigate reality effectively. Athar's direct challenges, so here's my challenge to you. Starting today, right now, pick one belief, one thing you hold to be true, something important, something that influences how you think about the world. And apply the 3 questions. Do I actually know this is true? Or am I just believing it? What evidence do I have? Real, verifiable evidence? What would disprove this? What would change my mind? Continue, then actively seek disconfirming evidence. Look for information that contradicts your belief. Read arguments against it. Engage with people who disagree. What will happen? One of 2 things will happen. Either your belief will hold up. You'll find it's well grounded, based on solid evidence, able to withstand scrutiny, and then your confidence in it increases appropriately. Or your belief will collapse. You'll discover it's not well grounded, based on weak evidence or no evidence, unable to withstand scrutiny. And then you discard it and stop building other beliefs on top of it. Make the point, Amzar, the both outcomes are good. Both outcomes make you more accurate, more aligned with reality, less susceptible to manipulation. For it, get philosophical feed. Here's what Feynman understood that most people miss. Your beliefs are tools. They're how you navigate reality. They're how you make decisions. They're how you understand the world. But tools can be faulty. Tools can be broken. Tools can be based on flawed information. Continue. And if you never examine your tools, if you never question them, test them, verify them, you're navigating reality with broken instruments. You'll make bad decisions. You'll misunderstand situations. You'll be easily led astray. Error is make it personal. That's what the mind control rule does. It gives you broken tools. False beliefs that feel like true beliefs. Unverified information that feels like knowledge. And you use those broken tools to make important decisions about your career, your relationships, your health, your politics, your life. Pause, but when you understand the rule, when you learn to override your default belief mechanism, you fix your tools. You ground your beliefs in reality. You base your decisions on truth instead of on whatever happened to enter your mind and get accepted without question. Tell final story. Let me end with one more story about Feynman. This one shows the mind control rule at its most powerful. It's the 1980s. Feynman is on the Rogers Commission investigating the Challenger disaster, the space shuttle that exploded, killing 7 astronauts. And NASA is presenting their explanation, complex technical explanations, lots of jargon, apparent authority. A farce, show others believing. Most of the commission members are defaulting to belief. NASA's the authority, they're the experts. Their explanation sounds plausible. The commission members are nodding along. Ours show Feynman questioning. But Feynman isn't defaulting to belief. He's asking the 3 questions. Do I know this is true? No, I'm just hearing NASA's claims. What evidence do I have? None that I've verified myself. What would disprove this? If I could show the O-rings failed in cold weather. Acer, the famous demonstration. So he does a simple experiment on live television during the hearing. He dunks an O-ring in ice water. Shows that it becomes brittle, shows that it doesn't seal properly when cold. The impact, one simple demonstration that everyone watching could understand. That couldn't be hidden behind technical jargon. That showed NASA's explanation was incomplete at best, wrong at worst. Make the point everyone else defaulted to belief, accepted NASA's authority, believed the complex explanation. Feynman overrode his default belief mechanism, demanded evidence, sought to verify, discovered the truth. There's their final statement. That's the power of understanding and breaking the mind control rule. You're not smarter than everyone else. You're not more knowledgeable. You're just not being controlled by your brain's automatic belief mechanism. Art walk to center. So here's what I want you to understand. Really understand. Your mind is being controlled by a rule you never learned. A default belief mechanism that accepts information without verification. That rule is being exploited. By marketers, by politicians, by media, by everyone who wants to control what you think. First you direct, address, but now you know the rule. Now you know how it works. Now you know how to override it. Ask the 3 questions. Seek disconfirming evidence. Catch your mind in the act of defaulting to belief. Make the promise to do that consistently, and you become very, very hard to manipulate. Your mind becomes your own again. You'll believe things because they're true, not because someone told you. You'll build your worldview on solid evidence, not on default acceptance. You'll navigate reality with accurate tools, not broken ones. Taught positive. That's what Feynman taught. That's what changed everything for him. That's what made him not just a great physicist, but a clear thinker about everything. And it can do the same for you. A final pause. See, the mind control rule has been governing your thoughts your entire life. But now you see it. Now you understand it. Now you can break free from it. Thank you. Isek BT. And if you want to go deeper into how Feynman thought, how he protected his mind from manipulation, how he developed clear thinking, how he saw through false claims, do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the Mind of Richard Feynman channel. We're exploring the actual cognitive tools that made Feynman's mind unstoppable. Not theories, not abstractions, practical techniques you can use today. Join us. Let's break free from mind control together. See you in the next one.
Well, the first thing I have to tell you is that you probably have some picture in your head about what antimatter is, and it is probably not quite right. Most people think antimatter is just regular matter with something flipped around, like a mirror image. And that is sort of true, but it misses the really interesting part. You see, the story of antimatter is one of the most beautiful stories in all of physics, because antimatter was not discovered by someone going into a laboratory and finding something strange. No. It was discovered by a man sitting at his desk, staring at equations and finding something that should not be there. Here is what happened. There was a physicist named Dirac, very brilliant fellow, and he was trying to write down the correct equations for how electrons behave. Now, this was in the late 1920s, and people already knew about quantum mechanics, and they knew about relativity, and Dirac wanted to put them together. He wanted an equation that respected both. So he worked and he found the simplest possible equation he could write down. Beautiful equation, very elegant, and it worked wonderfully for describing electrons. But there was a problem. The equation had solutions that made no sense. There were solutions with negative energy. Now, what does that even mean? An electron with negative energy. It sounds like nonsense. And most people would have thrown those solutions away and said, well, the math gives us some garbage. We just ignore the garbage. But Dirac did not do that. Dirac took the crazy answer seriously. He asked, what if these solutions are trying to tell us something? What if nature actually uses these strange solutions? And he made a prediction. He said, there must exist a particle that nobody has ever seen before. A particle exactly like the electron. Same mass, same everything, but with the opposite electrical charge. The electron is negative. This new particle would be positive. He called it the anti-electron. We call it the positron now. And you know what? A few years later, a fellow named Anderson was doing experiments with cosmic rays, particles that come raining down from outer space. And he found it. He found a particle that curved the wrong way in a magnetic field. It had the mass of an electron, but it curved like it had a positive charge. The positron was real. Dirac predicted it from pure mathematics, and there it was. Now this opens up a whole question. If the electron has an antiparticle, what about the other particles? What about the proton? What about the neutron? And here people get confused. They say, fine, the antiproton has the opposite charge. The proton is positive, the antiproton is negative. I can understand that. But then they ask about the neutron, and they say, wait a minute, the neutron is neutral. It has no charge. So how can it have an antiparticle? What is the opposite of? Nothing. And the answer is very interesting. The rule of the anti is not. Just that it has the opposite charge, that is what everybody thinks, and it is not quite right. The antiparticle has a whole set of properties that are opposite. There are other characteristics that particles carry, besides electrical charge. And when you flip all of those, you get the antiparticle. So yes, there is an antineutron, and the difference is easy to see. You put two neutrons together, nothing special happens. They just stay there, being two neutrons. But you put a neutron and an antineutron together, they annihilate each other. Big explosion of energy. Gamma rays, meson, all kinds of things come flying out. Now, when matter meets antimatter, they do not just react like chemicals mixing together. They annihilate the particles, destroy each other completely. All of their mass, 100% of it, converts directly into energy, into light. Think about that. When you burn wood, a tiny fraction of the mass becomes energy. Most of the stuff is still there as ash and smoke. When a nuclear reaction happens, maybe one of the mass becomes energy. But matter and antimatter, everything, the whole thing, gone, transformed into pure light. And this is not some theoretical idea. This happens in laboratories. You can make positrons. You can see them. You can watch them curve the wrong way between metal plates, and then you watch a positron bump into an electron, and both of them disappear. Two gamma rays come out, carrying all the energy that used to be the mass of those two particles. It is directly observed easily in the laboratory. Now, let me tell you how we really think about this, because so far everything sounds reasonable, strange, but reasonable. Opposite particles that annihilate when they meet, fine. But there is a deeper way to understand what a positron actually is. And it comes from looking carefully at the mathematics. When we calculate what happens with electrons, we draw little diagrams, pictures. Space goes one direction, time goes another direction, and usually we put time going upward, and we draw lines to represent particles moving through space and time. Now there is a mathematical function that tells us the amplitude for an electron to go from one point to another, let us call 1.5, and another 6. The function tells us the amplitude for the electron to go from 5 to 6. If 6 is later in time than 5, everything is normal. The electron goes forward in time. That is what we expect. But what if 6 is earlier than 5? You would hope the mathematics gives 0. You would hope there is no amplitude for an electron to go backward in time. That would be sensible. That would be comfortable. But it is not 0. The mathematics says there is an amplitude for this. And when you look at what this backward going section is like, something very interesting happens. You see the electron carries a charge, and we put arrows on the lines to remember which way it is going. Normally the arrow points forward in time, but in this case the arrow is going the wrong way. And this section going backward in time, it has almost all the same properties as an electron. Same mass, same interactions with light, but it curves the wrong way in a magnetic field. It behaves like it has a positive charge. It is just like an electron, except it is positively charged. It is called a positron, and it really exists. So you see, a positron is not just some separate particle that happens to be opposite to an electron. From this way of looking at it, a positron is what an electron looks like when it is going backward in time. Now let me show you what this means. Imagine an electron moving along through space and time, going forward, doing its thing. Then at some point, it interacts with light, with photons, and something happens. It starts going backward in time. That section going backward, it looks to us like a positron going forward because we see time flowing in one direction. Then later this backward going section interacts with more light and turns around again. Now it is going forward in time, looking like an electron again. What do we see? We are sitting here watching time go forward like sensible people. What do we observe? We see light come in, and suddenly two particles appear that were not there before. An electron and a positron. They exist for a while. Then they come together, annihilate each other, and produce light again. But from the mathematics, there is really just one line going forward, then backward, then forward. Now I want to be very clear about something. This is not philosophy. This is not just a way of talking about it. This is how the calculations actually work. When you compute probabilities using this picture, you get exactly the right answers. The experiments confirm it. So it turns out that for every particle in nature, there is an antiparticle, and they are connected through this mathematics of going forward and backward in time. Antiroton exist, and a proton and an antiproton can come together and annihilate each other, just like the electron and positron. Now here is something practical. When a positron is actually made in the laboratory on Earth, it does not go very far before it disappears. Why? Because the world is full of electrons. The walls are made of atoms, and atoms have electrons in them, so the positron wanders around, bumps into an electron, and they annihilate, gone. Two gamma rays come out. But if you are clever, you can keep them. You can make positrons go around in a circle using a magnetic field. Keep them away from the walls. Do not let them touch any electrons. And they stay. They stay and they stay and they stay for days, going around in a circle untouched by human hands. In fact, we do experiments by speeding up positrons going around in a circle to very high energy and making. Electrons go in a circle in the opposite direction, and we look at what happens when they collide with each other. New particles come out. It is one way we discover things. So there is nothing different about a positron than an electron. They are completely symmetrical, same mass, same behavior, except for history, except for the fact that our laboratory, our world has a lot more electrons than positrons. We have an excess of electrons. Why? Nobody knows. Now let me tell you more about what actually happens when matter and antimatter meet, because this annihilation business is very interesting. When an electron and a positron come together, they annihilate and produce two photons, two gamma rays, light. And these gamma rays carry away all the energy that used to be the mass of the electron and the positron. But the reverse also happens. And this is very important. If you have a photon with enough energy, it can turn into an electron and a positron, a pair. Out of light, you get matter and antimatter. Think about what this means. Energy can become matter. And not just any matter. It becomes matter and antimatter together, always in pairs. You cannot make an electron without also making a positron. They come together. This is called pair creation. And it happens all the time. Cosmic rays come down from space, hit atoms in the atmosphere, and create pairs of electrons and positrons. In laboratories, we shoot high energy. Photons at targets and pairs come out. So, you see, the universe has this rule. You can convert energy into matter, but you must make equal amounts of matter and antimatter. And you can convert matter back into energy, but only by bringing matter and antimatter together. Now, let me tell you how we draw pictures of all this, because the pictures are very useful for understanding what is happening. We draw diagrams. Space goes one way, time goes another way, usually upward. An electron moving through time is a line going up. A positron, which is an electron going backward in time, is a line going down. And a photon, a particle of light, we draw as a wavy line. Now, when an electron and a positron annihilate, what does the diagram look like? You have a line coming up, that is the electron going forward in time. You have a line coming down, that is the positron, which is really an electron going backward in time. They meet at a point, and from that point, wavy lines come out, the photons. But here is the thing from the diagram. You can see that it is really just one line. The electron comes up, reaches the point, and then goes back down. What we call the positron is the same line, just going the other direction in time. And at the point where it turns around, light is emitted or absorbed depending on how you look at it. Now the reverse, process pair creation. A photon comes in and an electron and positron come out. In the diagram, you have a wavy line coming in, and D from a point, two lines come out. One going up the electron, one going down the positron. But again, from the diagram, it is really one line, the electron going up, then turning around and going down, which looks like a positron going up. So all these processes, annihilation, pair creation, they're all connected. They are all the same thing looked at from different angles. It is just electrons interacting with light and sometimes going forward, in time, sometimes going backward. And the calculations work. When you compute the probabilities for all these processes using these diagrams, you get the right answers. The experiments confirm it. Now, I told you that when a positron is made on Earth, it does not last long because there are electrons everywhere. But there are ways to study them. In the laboratory, we can make beams of positrons. We speed them up using electric fields. We bend them using magnetic fields. And we can see that they bend the opposite way from electrons. Same mass, opposite charge, just as the theory predicts. And we can do something very interesting. We can take positrons and electrons and make them go around in circles in opposite directions very fast, near the speed of light, and then we make them collide with each other. What happens? They annihilate, but because they have so much energy, the photons that come out can immediately create new pairs, not just electrons and positrons, but other particles too, heavier particles, particles we would never see otherwise. This is one of the ways we discover new things about nature. We smash electrons and positrons together and see what comes out. It's like taking two simple things, colliding them and finding out what the universe is made of at a deeper level. And it all comes from this idea that positrons exist, that they are electrons going backward in time, that matter and antimatter can annihilate into energy, and energy can create matter and antimatter. Now, if we have anti-electrons, anti-protons, and anti-neutrons, we can in principle make anti-atoms. Think about hydrogen. One proton in the center, positive charge, one electron around it, negative charge. They attract. Very simple. Anti-hydrogen would be one anti-proton in the center, negative charge, one positron around it, positive charge. They attract two, same masses, same forces. Everything works the same. An anti-hydrogen atom would emit the same colors of light as regular hydrogen, exactly the same. You could not tell the difference just by looking at the light. If you made a whole world out of antimatter, it would work exactly the same as our world. Anti-chemistry would be the same as chemistry. Anti-biology would be the same as biology. People would live their lives and never know they were made of the opposite stuff unless they tried to touch something made of regular matter. Then annihilation. Now this raises a very big question. If matter and antimatter are so symmetrical, if they behave exactly the same way, then when the universe began, there should have been equal amounts of both. But look around. The earth is made of matter. The sun is made of matter. The stars, the galaxies, everything we can see, matter. Where is the antimatter? Some people thought maybe there are regions of the universe made of antimatter, anti-galaxies far away, and we just cannot tell because the light they emit looks exactly the same. But there is a problem where matter and antimatter regions would meet. There should be annihilation. Lots of it, gamma rays everywhere. We should see this. We look at the sky with gamma ray telescopes, and we do not see the signature of matter and antimatter annihilating at the boundaries. So it seems the universe is almost all matter. The antimatter is missing. Why? How did this happen? If the laws are symmetrical, if every process that makes matter also makes antimatter, how did we end up UI? The more matter, there must be some slight asymmetry, some tiny difference in the laws that we do not fully understand, something that made a little more matter than antimatter in the very beginning. And then what happened? All the antimatter found matter to annihilate with. Almost everything was destroyed, turned into light, but there was a little bit of matter left over, that tiny excess, and that is us. That is everything. We are the leftovers. Everything you see, every star, every planet, every person, we are the small residue that survived the great annihilation at the beginning of the universe. What is that asymmetry? Where does it come from? Nobody knows. This is one of the big unsolved problems. You know, this is how physics is. You discover something beautiful. Antimatter exists. Positrons are electrons going backward in time. Matter and energy can convert into each other. Wonderful. And then you find something you cannot explain. Why is there more matter than antimatter? The universe does not tell us. Not yet. But we keep looking. We do experiments. We smash particles together and see what comes out. We look at the sky. We write equations and see what they predict. And maybe someday somebody will figure it out. Maybe some young person will see something we all miss. That is how it works. That is science. What we know is already remarkable. That there is such a thing as antimatter, that it was predicted from pure mathematics before anyone ever saw it, that every particle has an antiparticle.
I don't mean you've lost the ability. I don't mean your brain stopped working. I mean something has been taken from you. Something fundamental. Something that made learning natural when you were a child. And you don't even know it's gone. Walk forward. When you were 5 years old, you were a learning machine. You absorbed language without trying. You figured out how things work by playing with them. You asked why 100 times a day. You learned constantly, effortlessly, joyfully. And then something happened. School happened, tests happened, grades happened, performance anxiety happened, the fear of being wrong happened, a direct address, and now you struggle to learn anything new. You buy courses you never finish. You start books you never complete. You have goals to learn skills that stay perpetually on your someday list. It's not laziness. It's not lack of intelligence. It's not even lack of time. It's that something fundamental has been broken. And until you understand what was taken from you and how to get it back, you'll keep struggling. At Pauses today, I'm going to show you exactly what happened. I'm going to show you what Richard Feynman understood about learning that most people never discover. And I'm going to show you how to fix it, because the ability to learn isn't gone. It's just been buried. And we're going to unbury it. Walk across stage A, or let me tell you a story. This story is about Feynman, but it's really about all of us. It's the 1960s. Feynman is teaching at Caltech. Brilliant students. Top of their class, they've aced every test. They're supposed to be the best learners in the world, and Feynman gives them a simple problem. A really simple problem. Something any physics student should be able to solve. They can't do it. Hey, pause. Not because they're not smart, not because they didn't study, but because they never actually learned. They memorized, they performed, they optimized for tests, but they never learned. Most share what Feynman did. Feynman asks one student, "Can you explain this concept to me in simple terms?" Like you're teaching a child, the student launches into technical jargon, complex terminology, textbook language. Feynman stops him. No, simple terms. What's actually happening? The student can't do it. He knows all the words. He can recite the equations. He passed the tests. But he doesn't understand what any of it means. Rake make the point, and that's when Feynman realized the education system had broken these students' ability to learn. It had trained them to perform instead of understand, to memorize instead of think, to optimize for grades instead of knowledge. They couldn't learn anymore. Not really. They could only perform. Farce or direct statement he is, and that's what happened to you too. Somewhere along the way, you stopped learning and started performing. You stopped trying to understand and started trying to get it right. You stopped being curious and started being afraid of being wrong. And that shift, that fundamental shift from learning to performing, that's why you can't learn anymore. Oh, Sargent, get intense. Let me show you exactly how this happens. Let me show you the 5 things that were taken from you. The 5 abilities that made you a natural learner as a child, but that schools systematically destroyed. Because once you see what was taken, you can take it back. As present, first one piece. The first thing that was taken from you, the ability to be confused. When you were a child, confusion was just part of learning. You didn't understand something. You sat with it. You played with it. You eventually figured it out. Confusion was the starting point, not the ending point. Contrast. But then school taught you confusion is failure. If you don't understand immediately, something is wrong with you. You should feel embarrassed. You should hide your confusion. Tests reinforced this. You had to know the answer right now. No time for confusion. No time for figuring things out. Just perform or fail. Make the impact clear. Hicks, and over years of this conditioning, you developed an intolerance for confusion. Now, when you encounter something you don't understand, your brain panics. I should know this. I should get this. What's wrong with me? And you quit. You give up. You move on to something easier. So that's why you can't learn anymore. Because learning requires confusion. Learning lives in the space of not knowing. And you've been trained to flee from that space as fast as possible. Aker share Feynman example. Feynman loved confusion. When he encountered something he didn't understand, he got excited. Oh, interesting. I don't understand this yet. Let me figure it out. Not yet. Like he was ashamed. Yet. Like it was an opportunity. He would sit with confusion for days, weeks, years sometimes, not anxious about it, curious about it, make the point, and that's the ability you need to reclaim. The ability to be confused without panic, to sit in not knowing without anxiety, to treat confusion as the natural beginning of learning, not as evidence of inadequacy. Asa moved to second. The second thing that was taken from you, the ability to play. Children learn through play. They don't study walking. They play with balance. They don't study language. They play with sounds. They don't study social interaction. They play with other kids. Play is learning. Learning is play. They're the same thing. I show what happened but school separated them. Learning became serious. Play became the opposite of learning. You play when work is done. You play to take a break from learning. Tests made this worse. You can't play your way to the right answer. You have to be serious, focused, disciplined. Make the impact clear, and over time, you forgot how to learn through play. Now, when you try to learn something, you make it grim. You make it serious. You make it work, and your brain resists. Because brains don't want to work. Brains want to play. That's when they're most engaged. That's when they learn best. Most share example that Feynman learned physics by playing with it. Literally playing. He'd imagine particles as little balls. He'd make up games about how they might interact. He'd doodle and sketch and wonder. What if? He wasn't being rigorous. He wasn't being academic. He was playing. And that play led to Nobel Prize winning insights. Contrasted, but you. When you try to learn coding or a language or a new skill, you don't play with it. You follow a curriculum. You do exercises. You take it seriously. And it feels like drudgery. And you quit. The loss make the point. That's the second ability you need to reclaim. The ability to play with what you're learning. To approach it with lightness. To experiment without goals. To explore without pressure. Move to the third thing that was taken from you, the ability to be wrong. Children are wrong constantly. They say words incorrectly. They misunderstand how things work. They make mistakes dozens of times a day, and they don't care. They just keep trying, keep experimenting, keep learning. Show what change but school made being wrong dangerous. Every wrong answer was marked in red. Every mistake lowered your grade. Every error was evidence against you. So you learned to avoid being wrong at all costs. How you make the impact, and now, as an adult, you're terrified of mistakes. You won't try something unless you're sure you'll do it right. You won't speak in a new language until you're confident. You won't attempt a skill until you've studied it thoroughly. You're not learning. You're protecting yourself from the feeling of being wrong. But here's the truth: being wrong is the only way to learn. Every right answer you ever reached, you reached by being wrong first. Every skill you ever mastered, you mastered through mistakes. Share Feynman insight. Feynman said, "I'd rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question." He loved being wrong, because being wrong meant he was learning something. His understanding was updating. His model of reality was getting more accurate. Contrast. But you've been trained to hate being wrong, to avoid it, to feel shame about it. And that's why you can't learn anymore. Because learning is being wrong repeatedly until you're right. Move to fourthies. The fourth thing that was taken from you, the ability to learn at your own pace. Children learn when they're ready. Some walk at 10 months, some at 15 months. Doesn't matter. They learn when their body and brain are ready. Sachs show what school did but school imposed arbitrary timelines. Everyone learns algebra at age 13. Everyone learns to read by age 7. Doesn't matter if you're ready. Doesn't matter if you need more time. And if you fell behind the timeline, you were labeled slow learner, needs extra help, below grade level, make the impact. So you internalize this: you should learn things at a standard pace. If something takes you longer than expected, something is wrong with you. And now, when you're learning something new, you're not actually trying to learn it. You're trying to learn it fast enough, at the normal pace, at the pace other people learn it. Get direct, and when you can't keep up with that imaginary timeline, you think, "I'm too slow, I'm not good at this isn't for me," and you quit. Facts share the truth. But here's what Feynman understood: learning has no timeline. Some things click immediately. Some things take years. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're learning, not how fast you're learning. Give example. Feynman spent years working on problems sometimes. Years. Not because he was slow, but because he was thorough. Because he was learning deeply instead of quickly. The students who learned quickly, they got surface knowledge. They moved on before understanding deeply. Feynman learned slowly, and he understood deeply. And that deep understanding made him a genius. Make the point as that's the fourth ability to reclaim, the ability to learn at your own pace, to not judge yourself by arbitrary timelines, to measure progress by depth of understanding, not speed of completion. Move to fifties, and the fifth thing that was taken from you. This is the most important one, the ability to be interested for its own sake. Children are interested in things just because they're interesting. Why is the sky blue? Not because it'll be on a test, because they want to know. Pure curiosity, intrinsic interest, learning for the sake of learning. Show what happened, but school killed that. It made learning transactional. You learn to get grades, you learn to pass tests, you learn to get credentials, you learn to get jobs. The interest itself doesn't matter. What matters is the outcome, the reward, the external validation. Make the impact devastating, and over time, you lost the ability to be interested in things for their own sake. Now, when you think about learning something, you immediately ask, what will this get me? How is this useful? What's the ROI? If you can't justify it with external rewards, you don't learn it. Pauses. And that's why you can't learn anymore. Because real learning, deep learning, requires intrinsic interest. It requires caring about the thing itself, not just what the thing will get you. A far share Feynman example. Feynman learned things that had no practical value. He learned to play bongos, he learned to draw. He learned about Mayan hieroglyphics, not for any reason, just because they interested him. And you know what? Those useless pursuits made him better at physics, because they kept his mind flexible. They kept his curiosity alive. They kept him in the habit of learning for learning's sake. Make the contrast but you. You won't learn something unless you can justify it, unless it's productive, unless it moves you towards some goal, and so your learning becomes narrow, instrumental, joyless. And eventually, you stop learning entirely. That pause, bring it together. So those are the 5 things that were taken from you. The ability to be confused, the ability to play, the ability to be wrong, the ability to learn at your own pace, the ability to be interested for its own sake. Direct statement. And until you reclaim these abilities, you'll keep struggling to learn. You'll keep starting courses you don't finish, buying books you don't read, making plans to learn skills you never develop. Not because you can't learn, but because you're trying to learn with broken tools. Get hopeful, but here's the good news. You can fix this. You can reclaim these abilities. You can become a natural learner again. Let me show you exactly how. Present the solution. First, embrace confusion. Actively practice sitting with not knowing. Next time you encounter something confusing, don't flee, don't panic. Just notice, I'm confused. That's okay. That's where learning starts. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Give yourself permission to be confused for those 10 minutes. Don't try to resolve the confusion. Just sit with it, examine it, get comfortable with it, explain why. Over time, this rewires your brain. Confusion stops triggering anxiety. It starts triggering curiosity. And once that happens, learning becomes possible again. A second solution. Second, make learning playful. Deliberately approach new things with lightness. When you're learning something, ask yourself, how could this be fun? How could I play with this? What would make this feel like a game instead of work? Give example, learning Spanish. Don't just drill vocabulary. Play word games. Make up silly sentences. Have fun with the sounds. Act out scenarios. Make it ridiculous. Learning coding? Don't just follow tutorials. Build something stupid and fun. Make a program that insults you. Make a bot that tells bad jokes. Play with the code. Hey, make the point. When learning feels playful, you engage. When you engage, you learn. Simple. Third solution. Third, celebrate being wrong. Make mistakes on purpose. When you're learning something new, your goal isn't to be right. Your goal is to discover how you're wrong. That's where the learning is. Practical application, and try something you'll probably mess up. Speak in that new language badly. Write terrible first drafts. Solve problems incorrectly. Then figure out where you went wrong. That's learning. That's updating your understanding. That's getting better. Fourth solution. Fourth, ignore timelines. Give yourself permission to learn slowly. When you start learning something, don't ask, how long should this take? Ask, am I understanding deeply? Give framework. If something takes you twice as long as it should, so what? You're not in school anymore. There's no timeline. There's no grade. There's just you and what you're learning. Go slow. Go deep. That's how real learning happens. Fifth solution. Fifth, learn things for no reason. Cultivate curiosity without purpose. Pick something to learn just because it interests you. Not because it's useful. Not because it'll advance your career. Just because you're curious. Give permission. Want to learn about medieval architecture? Do it. Want to understand how birds navigate? Learn it. Want to study the history of coffee? Go for it. It doesn't need to be useful. Being interested is enough. Explain why this matters. When you practice learning for its own sake, you rebuild your natural learning capacity. You remember what it feels like to be curious, to discover, to understand just because understanding is satisfying. And that capacity transfers. Once you're good at learning for fun, you're better at learning for purpose too. Share transformation story. Let me tell you about someone I know. Let's call her Lisa. Lisa was stuck. She wanted to learn data science, bought courses, started tutorials, always quit after a few weeks. For years, she kept trying and failing. She thought, I'm just not good at learning technical things. My brain doesn't work that way. Continue story. Then she learned about these 5 abilities. And she tried something different. Instead of forcing herself through another curriculum, she started playing with data, her own data. tracking things she was curious about, not trying to be right, not trying to be fast, just playing. She let herself be confused, sat with it, explored it, made mistakes, went at her own pace. Suck and share resultor, and within 3 months, she'd learned more data science than in all her previous attempts combined. Not because she worked harder, but because she was actually learning instead of just trying to perform. She's now a data analyst. Not because she became smarter, but because she reclaimed her ability to learn. Make the point. That's what happens when you fix what was broken. You become a learner again, naturally, effortlessly, joyfully, the way you were before school broke you. Ace or get philosophical cue. Here's what Feynman understood that most people miss. Learning isn't about acquiring information. It's not about performance. It's not about credentials. Learning is about satisfying curiosity, about updating your understanding, about getting closer to truth. Make it personal. When learning is about those things, when it's intrinsic, playful, mistake-tolerant, self-paced, and curiosity-driven, it's natural, it's easy, it's what your brain wants to do. But when learning is about performance, about being right, about meeting timelines, about external rewards, it's forced, it's hard, it's what your brain resists. That direct statement, you can't force yourself to learn the way school taught you to learn. That system was designed to sort and certify people, not to foster actual learning. But you can learn naturally the way children learn, the way Feynman learned, by reclaiming the abilities that were taken from you. Tell final story. Let me end with one more Feynman story. Late in his life, Feynman is asked, "What made you such a successful learner? How did you understand things so deeply?" And he says something profound. "I never stopped being surprised by things. I never lost that childlike curiosity about how things work." Or pause it. That's it. That's the secret. He never let school break what made him a natural learner. He never stopped being confused and curious and playful and willing to be wrong. Asar, make the connection that those things were taken from you. But they're not gone forever. They're just buried, and you can dig them back up. They walk to center A, so here's what I want you to do, right now, this week. Pick one thing you've wanted to learn but haven't been able to, one skill, one subject, one area of knowledge, and try learning it differently. Give specific instructions. Don't buy a course. Don't make a study plan. Don't set a timeline. Just start exploring it playfully. Let yourself be confused. Make mistakes on purpose. Go at whatever pace feels right. Learn it just because you're interested. Pause. Give yourself 1 month. Just 1 month of learning this way. Learning like a child. Learning like Feynman. Learning with the abilities you were born with, not the performance anxiety school gave you. Make the promise and watch what happens. Watch how different it feels. Watch how much more you learn. Watch how natural it becomes. Because you're not fixing a learning disability. You're removing the obstacles that were artificially placed in front of your natural learning ability. If you get emotional, you were born as a learning machine. Your brain is designed to learn. It's what it wants to do. School didn't make you a learner. School broke your learning, but the learner underneath is still there, still ready, still capable. Final statement so you can learn. You always could. You just needed to understand what was taken from you and how to get it back. Now you know. Now you can learn again. Pasapai, thank you. Ardaza beaten. And if you want to go deeper into how to reclaim your natural learning abilities, if you want more techniques based on how Feynman actually learned, do me a favor. Like this video and subscribe to the Mind of Richard Feynman channel. We're uncovering how to learn naturally, deeply, and joyfully. Not through school's broken system, but through methods that actually work with how your brain functions. Join us. Let's become learners again. See you in the next one.